The past 6 months, I sat down with a man who had a heart attack and drove himself to the hospital and left the car running in the parking lot. I heard a filmmaker describe finally holding the award he's dreamt about for years and feeling nothing. And a therapist told me about the day she collapsed on her kitchen floor and still drove to pick up her kids from school because nobody else was going to. Every one of them hit a point where the life that they've built stopped making sense. I keep recognizing myself in these conversations because turning 50 did the same thing to me. I couldn't pretend anymore that most of my life was still in front of me. I'm Stephen Miao, and this is the Midlife Remix.
I think it was when I was at a Bank of America and I had a really cool job, head of digital strategy and innovation. I got to basically it was future state toys in the consumer world around banking. It seems great. I was talking to Sean, and he was 10 at the time, my oldest son. When your son looks, he was like, "Daddy, I think you just fly in planes and swear at people." And children are incredible truth sayers. And I was just like, "Oh my God. You're a stuffed corporate khaki. You finally become the person you have said you've never wanted to be."
I think for me, 50 was very important because actually it was a real good wake up call for me because, you can't pretend that you still have the rest of your life in front of you or most of your life in front of you. When you're in your 20s, you're like, oh, yeah, like in the future, whatever. And you sort of live your life and you just don't really think about it. But then when you turn 50, you're like, shit, like time's running out. And I better get my shit in order and I better live the way I want to live. And I think that's why the 50s are a great time because it forces us to get in alignment with who we truly are.
The disruption was the loss of both of my parents within a 5-month period of time, my second divorce, and I lost my job. My position was eliminated after 28 years at the same firm. And so here I was, like, who am I? Sometimes I would call it the corporate heroin. We would get a bonus and wow, that would cure all of the problems. And was I really being my authentic self? And after the check cleared in a little bit of time, reality continued to set in. I have an acronym that I created for myself. It's IAWO. Stands for It All Works Out.
I had a heart attack in 2021. I just realized about 15 minutes into it that this could be that moment that, 3 generations of men in my family have gone through at this very age that I was at. I was 6 months from the age my father was when he died and his father before him. From that day on, I slept 2 more hours a night every night for the rest of my life. I would find myself asking this question all the time, which was this very simple question: do I want to be doing this right now?
And obviously you learn through death, I guess, as well, that the times that you really feel happy a lot of times don't have to do with your ambition, because the ambition, I just held this award in my hand, and it was one of the awards that I really dreamt of, a German film award. I had dreamt of that award for quite some time. But once I held it in my hand, it didn't give me any satisfaction. It was just like, okay, so what's next? What's next? And that's not the answer. Sometimes I think the answer is what's in front of you a lot of times. Spending time with your kids, maybe taking a hike, going on a walk, and a lot of times simple activities that you can do without the ambition that you think make you happy.
And I think that specifically death can be a great teacher in that. We do need to live more intentional because we don't have forever. And so that really was for me the impetus to look at what striving means, to look at what success means, and to, what ambition means. Because if ambition takes me away from the things that I care about, then maybe it's the wrong ambition for me. Not that we should not be ambitious, but we should be ambitious based on what is inside of us, what we care about.
It was the image of myself. That was the most difficult thing. I have built this idea, and maybe not only the idea. I think there were many times in my life that I've proven to be useful and whatever people think it's success, but I think I've done a good job most of the times. And I built this idea of a very, maybe a bit serious, very professional, very sharp young man. And when I decided that I needed to give this opportunity to myself, I was a bit lost because this new version of me was very hard to relate with the previous image. And I lost a bit ground. I remember one day I was looking at my LinkedIn profile and I thought, this looks so neat. What am I going to write now? Should I change my picture and be honest and, put the guy, instead of the guy with the suit and the tie, a guy with the backpack and in his office, which my office is always outdoors. And what should I write? Backpacker? I mean, that was difficult.
And the transitions are often much longer than we anticipate them to be, and that's the scary part. Later on, when we got past the transition, we sort of retrofit our narrative of our career and our lives in a very sort of smooth way. But if we're honest with ourselves, that transition or these transitions are never smooth and they're always painful.
I spent a lot of time with the identity crisis or, imposter syndrome everywhere, trying to fit in, trying to feel seen or be accepted. In my early 20s, I did not ever wear my hair curly. I straightened it all the time. I even had my hair blonde at one point. And I look back and it's like, oh my gosh, you poor girl. I went through so much trouble to go against my natural who I am just to look apart or fit in or be accepted. Inwardly, it was the same. I was outwardly damaging my gorgeous hair that God gave me and inwardly damaging my soul and suppressing so much of who I was because I felt like I couldn't share who I am or talk about things in a way, depending on where I was at or who I was around.
I never been diagnosed with ADHD, but it's very obvious that I have it. I grew up in the 70s and, people didn't really know what it was at the time. I believe now that all these challenges that I've had actually have turned into my superpowers. And specifically, I think ADHD, when you're able to manage it, you're able to focus much more on the things that interest you.
Being more visible meant getting up and networking, speaking to people, growing relationships, because people who are high functioning and high performing tend to think putting your head down, getting the work done is how you become seen, but it's not. And you do have to grow relationships and speak to people. And there's a lot of people that I work with today who they'll say they were passed for a promotion and they don't know why. And then you ask, well, what does your network look like? And it's not really that large because they will sit at their desk all day and just work. And that is not how to be more strategic. That is not going to help increase visibility. If I could go back in time, it would be learn how to nurture relationships sooner and also discern who will help you get ahead, who might hold you back, and how to advocate and speak up for yourself.
And it was probably about noon, right? And because I was home and I was having lunch and I was in my kitchen and all of a sudden I collapsed. I literally collapsed on the floor. I didn't pass out. I hit my head and I could not get up. I was like paralyzed on the floor and I was just sitting there. And 2 hours had passed, 2.5 hours. And I look at the clock and I realize it's time for me to go pick up my kids at school. And if I don't go get them, no one's going to get them. And this was not a time with cell phones. I mean, I think we had a flip phone, but with a smartphone wasn't there, right? And I remember grabbing the side of the cupboard and grabbing the handle and pulling and like grabbing the top of the countertop in my chair and I pull myself up and I grab my keys and I somehow get in my car and I drive to go pick up my kids. And it was in that, my whole business is called cracking open. It was like in that cracking open moment, I knew I needed help. It was like my rock bottom on the floor moment. Well, we're in a loneliness epidemic. You're right, loneliness pandemic. We're the highest rates of anxiety and depression and suicide ideation we've ever seen. Men are much higher than women around suicide. High blood pressure, smoking, and being overweight, you're way less likely to die from those than you are from loneliness. And it's something that is very sneaky because people may be extremely lonely, but they have their phone. So they don't know they're lonely because they act like they're busy and they have their phone and they're the life of the party. But they're dying inside.
And between being lonely and thinking that you are lonely, that can be quite a distance. And often, I think what you need to do is a little bit like watering the plants. Once in a while, don't expect replies. Once in a while, call your friends, send a message, ask how they are doing. And you know what? You will never get less. So, some people are worried, but they don't reply. I mean, don't wait for the reply. Water the plants. And I think that just by watering the plants of your friends, of your relations, for sure, you are not feeling as lonely as you think you are.
Yeah. It's not at all a selfish thing. And I think that that's what a lot of people get wrong, on social media or also just the perception is that if I have me time, that is an ego thing.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, me time, the proper me time really is to be present and to reconnect so that you are capable of giving more. So a lot of my listeners are leaders, either executives or entrepreneurs, and they often are so busy and they believe that they have to be in every meeting. And in reality, that if they want to be better leaders, they need to take the time. They need to cut out all those unnecessary meetings that they know they should not be in, all the unnecessary decisions that they're making that somebody else should be making, so that they actually can have that me time to create that space to truly be present, to truly become a better leader, which is not a selfish thing. A lot of people think that fear is good because it enables them to be vigilant. And the vigilance is a sense of control. And they believe that they have the ability to control. I think in reality, and this might be my opinion, but in reality, we have very little control or none. I love what Alan Watts says. He says that life is like falling from the sky with a rock next to you, and you're holding on to dear life on that rock while you're falling.
Any practice worth its salt should fail at some point after it's been working for a while to let you know that you've changed or something else has changed. The definition of life is change, right? Entropy is death, change is life. At some point, the circumstances of life change enough that your tools, the way you were using them, won't work anymore. And ideally, we would modify as we go, but we tend not to be built that way. So once we get a thing going good, we kind of stay with it until it breaks. And then and hopefully it breaks just a little bit. You get a flat tire, you don't crash into a tree.
I think actually faith is different than belief. I think belief is more rigid, right? Belief is believing in a doctrine or believing in very specific things, whereas faith is something that is something in the unknown and in the exploration and in about learning. And one of the things that I try to practice and I try to work with my clients on is that the one faith to really have is that we can't control the things that are going to happen. But if we have faith, then we are going to be able to figure out how to deal with any situation.
And I knew it was probably one of his last days, but we didn't stop the filming because my dad's also a filmmaker, and he would have never wanted me to stop that filming, because he would have known what the implications were. You know, you have a huge set. It was months of preparation. And so I continued filming. And then last day, and then I sat on the chair in a little break, and all of a sudden I felt this wave. I'm not a religious person. I'm not religious in a classical way. I am a spiritual person, but I did feel a wave coming towards me and engulfing me and embracing me, a warmth that I've never felt before. And that's and like 15 minutes later, my brother called me and told me my dad just died. You know, it also opened up an interesting horizon for me in terms of spirituality. But I experienced that, and that also consoled me in a way, and gave me some hope, which I never expected. It's about the voids that you feel in your heart. You cannot heal them completely, and you're not supposed to, because that void is you, and it's the love to somebody like your dad or a friend or your family. Don't close it. Don't close that wound.
One of the things that I've learned over the years is you can ask for signs if you're on the right path. And I've learned to do that. So there have been times where, like, I'll give you an example, when I wanted a business partner to join me. And I had been operating on my own. And I really wasn't sure whether it was the right thing for me. And I had asked, all right, so if it's meant to be like this particular individual, then show me a white butterfly. Okay, when am I going to ever see one of those? So lo and behold, a day went by and 2 white butterflies were outside of my fence. And then I thought, no, that's like, this is a crock. So, but the next day I went outside and I had one land on my lunch plate. Okay, this just has to be a coincidence, right? This just has to be a coincidence. So I asked again, and I was like, all right, show me a bunch of white butterflies. So I go for a walk, and my husband's standing next to me, and we're walking. It's 1 p.m. And he looks behind me and he asks me, he's like, what did you ask for? And I said, why? And he goes, look behind you. And it was a swarm of white butterflies following me down the street. I think that I have tremendous faith in what's in the unseen. And if we ask and we believe, it is given. I don't believe that see and you believe. I believe and you will see.
I think it has to do with being aligned with your values, because if you're aligned with your values, then you're authentic. And you don't have to pretend to be something that you're not. And when you don't have to pretend to be somebody that you're not, then that translates into vibrations that the other person can feel. So somebody, I forget, said this to me, is you don't change the world with ideas, you change the world with vibrations.
Feelings are faster. They're way faster. Thoughts typically come on a 3-second tape delay. And the thoughts in the frankly egoic mind are designed to protect the physical body. And so the machine that is the brain is taking experiences from the past and probability weighting what's likely to happen in the future, and doing so with a negativity bias. Keeps us alive. I'm very appreciative of that. But it's slow, and so people know this when they feel instantaneously in their gut that this is not the right room to be in. I don't really feel like I'll align with that person when they meet him at a cocktail party. Very fast. Very, very fast. Now, the thoughts emerge after that. Again, 3-second tape delay. Well, you should like her. She's a wonderful person. She's got a beautiful house in the Hamptons. You should like her. That's the mind. That's the thought that comes after. The mind, again, probability weighting and creating, a more linear, rational thought process. Well, you should like her because she's got a house in the Hamptons, and the house in the Hamptons represents wealth, and wealth represents security, and security represents protection. And so you feel better, right, ego, that you have the opportunity to spend time with her because she represents safety and security. But ultimately, I would argue when that feeling emerged at the very beginning, that's the truest feeling. That's your truth. That's your deepest truth. And ultimately, you can rationalize whatever you want about this person. But ultimately, if you have a feeling that's off about her, my guess is whether it's 12 months from now, 12 days from now, 12 years from now, something will not end up going well in that relationship because your body knew. It knew right away. That feeling was there right away. I encourage every executive to start with 2 phrases. One is, I don't know, because you don't. You just don't. You might pretend that you do, but you don't because things are moving too quickly. And the second thing is, I made a mistake, because we all make mistakes. And so in saying, I don't know, and I made a mistake as a leader, you're stepping away from this posturing of knowing as a CEO that's supposed to know to a CEO that's sensing and who's willing to admit that that didn't work and that's okay. But we learned a lot. Let's experiment again. Let's become better attuned at sensing and into what's emerging. And from that place, leading differently, and it could be leading in your life. Because I know a lot of folks that are in your audience are trying to sense into what's next for them or what the right way to live is as the old frameworks fall away. And so it's all the same exercise, learning to be comfortable with sensing and not knowing.
The work that I'm doing now, I would do even if I don't get paid. Of course, I do need to find a way to get paid in some way, but when you are doing what you're really passionate about, where the intersection between what you're really passionate about and what you're really good at, I believe that you will find a way to be able to make money doing that. And I think actually in the age of AI, it is much harder to just bag it and to be able to go every day to your job that you hate and sort of be mediocre because actually AI is going to probably replace you. Whereas if you are leaning into your humanity, you're probably more likely to be that creator that you're talking about in your book.
If you're able to release the fear, let go of the attachment of identity, and enter into the exploration, that's what makes life magical.
Maybe a thought that came to me by a good friend a couple of days ago. And this is related with don't miss a walk and don't miss a day of writing. Imagine reading a book with no way to turn the page back. How carefully would you read it? That's life.